আজকে প্রথম পর্বে আমাদের সম্মানিত স্পিকার ডক্টর অনিন্দিতা শোম, উনি আর্টস অ্যান্ড হিউম্যানিটিজ সাবজেক্টে কিভাবে পিএইচডি থিসিসটা আমাদের লেখা উচিত সে নিয়ে আলোচনা করবেন। দ্বিতীয় পর্বে ডক্টর শরিক আজিজ, উনি আলোচনা করবেন যে সায়েন্সের সাবজেক্টে কিভাবে পিএইচডি থিসিস লেখা উচিত। এবং তৃতীয় পর্ব হবে আমাদের প্রশ্নোত্তর পর্ব। সেখানে প্রশ্ন করার জন্য আপনাদেরকে চ্যাট বক্সে আপনাদের প্রশ্নগুলো লিখে পাঠাতে হবে। আমরা ওখান থেকে একে একে প্রশ্নগুলোর উত্তর করার চেষ্টা করব। তারপরেও যদি আপনাদের মনে হয় যে আপনাদের কোনো ডাউট থেকে গেল, তাহলে আপনারা রেজ হ্যান্ড বাটনটা ক্লিক করবেন, তারপরে আপনাকে অ্যালাউ করা হবে আমাদের স্পিকারের সঙ্গে ডাইরেক্টলি ইন্টারাক্ট করার জন্য। ঠিক আছে? আর আজকের মিডিয়াম অফ আওয়ার কন্ডাক্ট উইল বি আ মিক্স অফ বেঙ্গলি অ্যান্ড ইংলিশ। Okay, so now I would like to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Anindita Shome is an assistant professor in the Department of Social Sciences and Humanities, VIT-AP University, Andhra Pradesh, India. She received her MA in English Literature from IFLU, Hyderabad, and her MPhil and PhD degrees from the Center for the Study of Indian Diaspora, Central University of Hyderabad, Telangana. Her main areas of research interest include South Asian diaspora, gender, youth, transnationalism, diasporic literature. Her articles have appeared in journals such as Perspectives on Global Development and Technology, South Asian Diaspora, and Journal of Comparative Literature and Aesthetics, and chapters in edited collections such as Routledge International Handbook of Diaspora Diplomacy, Routledge Handbook of South Asian Migrations, and Mapping Indian Diaspora, Contestations and Representations. I would like to welcome Anindita Di. Thank you very much, Anindita Di, for being here. We are very delighted to have you with us. So I would like to request you to begin with your talk.
First, and I'm audible, right?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, fine. So before I share my PPT, just give me a minute. So there's a problem with my audio regarding the output is closed with my laptop for some reason, but I suppose you can hear me. But as I go ahead with my presentation, I believe you need to hear me clearer. After I finish my presentation, I'll switch on another device where I can hear your questions. In case there's an interruption in my audio, please write to me so that I can get your message in a clear manner. I'm really sorry for the technical error. But this is clear, right? Dilruba and Fardos, আমাকে শুনতে পাচ্ছো তো ঠিক করে?
হ্যাঁ দিদি, শোনা যাচ্ছে, অসুবিধা নেই, তুমি শুরু করো।
Great. So first and foremost, thank you Dilruba and Fardos and the entire ABP team. It's wonderful to know all the work you do. It's path-breaking as well, and all the hard work you all put in. And it's also very humbling and delightful that you sent me this invitation. So I hope I can be of some help to the young scholars, to the budding scholars here. And thank you so much for the invitation. And I'll share my screen and I'll try to be as concise and clear as possible. Tarpore ja questions thakbe, you can put in the chat box. I'll try to address it as clearly as possible. All right. And all of it that I'll be addressing would be on the basis of my experience as a PhD and of course an MPhil research scholar before that. So আমি স্ক্রিনটা শেয়ার করছি. In case it's not visible, just write in the chat box. Is this visible?
Yes, it is visible now.
I have to just check. Okay, fine. I'll go back. I'm really sorry about this. Okay, fine. So, good evening to one and all. And so, I'll just begin with my presentation. The title of my presentation today is Decoding Doctoral Dissertations, a step by step guide to writing a PhD thesis. Before that, of course, you have got my introduction from Dilruba. Thank you so much for that. So, I'll not introduce myself again, and Ami just begin Kochi with the presentation. Uh, when you finally decide to do a PhD, I think it's a momentous movement, like movement in life. I mean, that is very important, right? When you know that research korte hobe, PhD is what you want. The intention, I believe, before you choose your area supervisor, intention is very important because that intention, that love for your field of study, ওটাই sustain করবে. That will help you sustain those 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whichever institute, university you are in, ওদের যা demand থাকবে timeline. So of course, that intention should be there, that idea or that a desire to go into a PhD. That is the foremost thing, I believe, first and foremost thing before you start deciding on what area you want to go into, which university, department you'd like to work for. So, after you have decided that this is what you want, the first and foremost thing again is this would be your area of research or topic. So I will share how I decided on my area of research, and of course, bakira যেভাবে decide করে, and also a few relevant areas that I'm aware of now. It's not exhaustive. It's not এরম না যে আর কোনো area নেই এর বাইরে বা কিছু, but I'll just let you know the process and how even the young people who are now going into PhD, they are choosing their areas. So first and foremost, যখন you choose your area of research or topic, say for example, English নিয়ে কাজ করবে, English literature, ensure that first and foremost it's relevant to the present as well as in your future. All right. uh, of course, one would be যখন তুমি interviews এ যাবে, they will of course ask the relevance of the entire thing and the importance of your research and the relevance of it in the present scenario as well as the future. And তুমি যখন assume you will become a professor, assistant, associate, তখনও তোমার পিএইচডি সাবজেক্টের উপর ইউ উইল গিভ স্পেশালাইজড কোর্সেস, তো যত রেলেভেন্ট হবে অফকোর্স তত it will be accepted and you will also be interested in it. তো ফার্স্ট রেলেভেন্স দেখবে, ফর এক্সাম্পল এরিয়াস যেরকম ডিজিটাল হিউম্যানিটিস, মেডিকেল হিউম্যানিটিস, rereadings, feminist retellings, of course rereadings of even Shakespeare, all these things are ভেরি রেলেভেন্ট নাও। তো যে কোনো জিনিস যেগুলো রেলেভেন্স আছে ওইগুলোর ওপর একটা লিস্ট বানাবে ফার্স্ট এন্ড ফরমোস্ট। ফর এক্সাম্পল I decided that, of course, diaspora migration is very relevant these days, and of course, forever since time immemorial, I believe. So my area of interest matched with the relevance of the topic as well, so I chose that. I know friends যারা cinema choose করে, digital humanities, medical humanities choose করে. So those would be relevant for the present as well as for the future. So the topic should be very relevant, contemporary, in a manner where you can defend it. Why did you do this in interviews and all of that? Second, of course, interest. যেরকম choose করা যে PhD করব, all those years you would be sustaining it based upon your interest. It's a difficult journey, no doubt. Uh, তো যেরকম ওইটা interest sustain করবে, your topic should also be of interest to you, because a difficult journey, when you have a love for it, you feel that it's going to make a difference, and who vehemently you are supporting it, deeply you relate to that topic, only then probably, of course, with the relevance of the topic, you can go on complete it in those 3 to 5 years. So again, interest match korte hobe. Interest now match korle, after your coursework, after 1 or 2 months of literature review, you will anyway you will lose interest, disinterested ho jabe. তো ইন্টারেস্টিং হতে হবে টু ইউ। ইউ শুড বি এবল টু, অ্যাজ উই অল নো, লিটারেচার পিএইচডিস অনেক টাইম লাইব্রেরিজে কাটবে, অনেক টাইম যে স্টোরের আর্টিকেলস পড়তে পড়তে কাটবে। দের উইল বি multiple hours of work, citations, bibliography, so much of reading to do, so much of writing to do. So if you're not interested in it, if you open a text and books, and if you're not instantly interested in it, it becomes difficult, to sustain those. There will be a time in between, যখন মনে হবে, of course, oh, it's going nowhere. That's very common. So it's always, I always say, it should be according to the relevance of that in your field, and of course, it should be matching with your interest and liking. So these two should be very essential. Then, one of the most important aspects of a PhD, choosing your supervisor. Supervisor choose kora in your area of study. So, of course, do a thorough research on the department, center, university. Do a thorough research on the supervisor. There are different ways you choose a supervisor. Sometimes someone, of course, who is very interested in the field and is doing some very good work, ওইভাবেও চুজ করে অনেকে। ইভেন সে ফর এক্সাম্পল এ ভেরি সিনিয়র সুপারভাইজার হু হ্যাজ এ লট অফ নেম ইন দ্য ফিল্ড ওইভাবে চুজ করে, পাবলিকেশনস এর ওপর বেস করে চুজ করে, নেটওয়ার্কিং কেমন সুপারভাইজার। দিস আর ভেরি রিয়ালিস্টিক অ্যাসপেক্টস অফ পিএইচডি, যে নেটওয়ার্কিং কেমন আছে, কন্ট্যাক্টস কেমন আছে সুপারভাইজারের, পাবলিকেশনস কেমন আছে, and all these things, the work she or he or they have done till now, ওটা কি ম্যাচ করছে কিনা, will it help you in the present and in the future, এগুলো খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট. Everyone chooses the supervisor thinking about all these aspects. So what is your priority, ওর উপর base করে. So my priority was, of course, uh, how much, how deeply in publication is my supervisor involved in, কতটা আমি রিসার্চ শিখতে পারবো, জার্নাল পেপার্স লেখা, all these things were very important to me. Then so I chose according to it. আর একটা supervisor choose করার থাকে, as you keep talking to the people in that department, center, seniors দের সাথে and all, জানতে পারবে how much time one supervisor takes to complete a thesis. It of course varies from student to student. সবার area of work and কি ওর মধ্যেও কি করছে, কতটা ডেটা কালেক্ট করছে, কতটা টাইম লাগছে অ্যানালাইজ করতে, ডিফারেন্ট হয়। সব স্টুডেন্টসদের এক টাইম লাইনে কেউ শেষ করতে পারেন না। But then more or less you will know this person takes এতটা, this person takes, so ওটাও priority হচ্ছে. If you feel, I know people whose research did take more than 5 years, and it was needed because খুব difficult field work ছিল, ethnographic work ছিল. So that is relevant, of course, that is acceptable. But then there would be certain areas, of course, which you can wrap up in 3 to 4 years. তো ওইটাও দেখতে হবে, if my supervisor I'm working with has completed PhDs in 3, 4 or 5 years, all right. তো ওই বেসিসে, টাইমলাইন বেসিসেও চুজ করে select করে অনেকে supervisor. Then of course the second thing is, you have your supervisor in mind, that person has agreed to guide you, you have your topic of interest, you know that this is very relevant to the field. Ensure that when you narrow down area of research, narrow down করতে হবে. Say for example you want to work on subaltern studies, ওটাকেও narrow down করে আনতে হবে, medical humanities কেও না. So when you take that one topic, which one thesis title, that area, that topic you want to work on, ensure that if it's social sciences and on a humanities research, qualitative, quantitative, mixed research data collect করা হয়, enough data আছে. I was always told when I was doing my coursework that যখন topic choose করবে, there should be enough to work on, and there should be certain things that have already been done, so that literature reviewটা করতে সুবিধে হয়. Of course, if it's a breakthrough topic, no one has worked on it. Of course, if you're confident, you should go ahead with it. But usually, আমি choose করেছিলাম যে okay, there is enough work on it. Say for example, আমার PhD topic ছিল South Asian youth diasporic representations. The area was mostly, the location was mostly US, but আমি representations লিখেছিলাম through it. তো ওই representation say there were some work, very good work, say for example Professor Radhika Gajala and all have been working on it, and but then there was not that many, it was not overworked with, people were still looking at the second, third, and subsequent generations of diaspora, all right, jara oikhane thake and they have citizenship of that country and they're still related to the homeland. So it is something, this younger generations representations, people were working on it like Sunaina Mara and all, but then there was a lot more to be done yet. So আমি ওইভাবে চুজ করেছিলাম, you can also choose so that you have enough to read, there's a guide you can take through them, that okay, I can work accordingly, and what are the areas still to be worked on, so there is enough done as well as enough to be done, এইভাবে টপিকটা চুজ করবে, so that you are, of course you can be the first one to do something in the topic, I feel that is amazing as well, but then usually pragmatically দেখতে গেলে ওইভাবে আমি চুজ করেছিলাম, most of us choose it in that manner so that literature reviewটা খুব solid হয়. So this would be our area of research or topic, all right. Then I would move on to say for example the introductory chapter in a manner, all right, your introduction, this is not really to go into the chapter, but what are the things that you should keep in mind once you have, when you say for example I would advise you যখন course work চলবে তখন all these things should be worked on. You will have your weekly or monthly meetings with your supervisor, doctoral committee member, very important, doctoral committee member, you at least keep one person who is very good, you know, for my case in HCU I had a wonderful doctoral committee member with my supervisor, so I was helped a lot to give shape with doctoral meetings, committee meetings every 6 months hoto, Tuesday, and I think that gave shape, that gave the push to complete one chapter after the other. Kichu jodi, if I were taking things which were out of the timeline, say for example, I have to finish things in 4 5 years, but I was planning to work on things which would take 10 years. So Oda bolto ki it is going out of hand, you know, narrow it down, keep it limited to this. This is not making sense. So doctoral committee meetings kulo were very essentially, crucially helpful to me. So, doctor, with your supervisor, ensure that there is at least one person in your doctoral committee member who can sit in those meetings with you and fixes all of those things. So dissertation, when you start with it, of course, your research questions should be very clear. Usually, it's advisable. You can have one idea is to have 3 to 6 or 1 to 3. All right, mostly. And if you have a lot of things to work on, of course, don't overshoot it more than 6. Research objectives also, it should be limited to 6. 3 would be optimal. Then your aims and goals and time frame. You should have that time frame in your mind and talk to your supervisor about it. What is the ideal time frame for your research to be completed? I would always advise people to wrap it up in 3 to 4 years, 5 years, if say is there is an exceptional thing. Usually humanities research, I feel it's more than enough. I'm not talking about the other fields of study, but then of course, like I said, if it's a very crucial, very sensitive, something that you are doing it for the first time, like Ami actually research, which was in a community, again, which took a lot of time for her to gather information. মানে breakthrough করতে অনেক time লেগেছিল, interviews নিতে and all. So it was on a very uh, again a topic and a place which was not very accessible. ওখানে গিয়ে করা and then data আনা, interviews আনা took a lot of years. Of course, that makes sense. But then if you can complete it in 3 to 5 years, I would advise people to complete it in a framework of 5 years at least. So humanities research mostly is doable within 5 years. So of course এখন তো অনেক institutes 3 to 4 years ও wrap up করিয়ে দেয়. And so of course so your time frame should be in mind. So when you begin with those things, have all these questions, because your research questions objectives decide করবে তুমি literature review তে কি কি নেবে, chapterization decide করবে. There will be a lot of things that you know. So all these things, when research questions objectives are there, একটু এদিক ওদিক হলে you can immediately get back on track. You would know that okay, this is not what you are looking into. So Again, let me give an example. This is again from my own thesis. So, my research questions, এইভাবে ছিল. Like I said, I was looking at diasporic youth, especially South Asian in US. There are few more. I think two more. I just chose three here. So you can fix your research questions accordingly, according to what you're working on. All right, depending on it. I looked into gender, I looked into transnationalism. So basically, primarily, I mean, transnational and gender identities. Dekhilam. So, of course, most of these things were based on it, and I was looking it through fiction. And there's another criteria through digital spaces, other representations, dekhilam, literature as well as virtual spaces representation. So, আমার research questions and objectives around এগুলোতেই ইরিদ গিরিদ ঘুরতো। So what happens in this is, see, for example, I'm reading a South Asian diasporics. I'm reading, for example, very simple Jhumpa Lahiri's novel, and there are many short set of short stories and data address code chanaita. Of course, I won't take that into account. I will only take into account where the second, third, and subsequent generations as a South Asian diaspora identity is being addressed in those short stories or novels or whatever I'm taking as my qualitative data. তো এইভাবে research questions and objectives and aims and goals address করবে. Time frame, of course, it should be within you. You should know the time frame. এই বাকিগুলো, it should be in your thesis. So again, this would be it. I'd quickly go ahead. Conceptualization. Chapter conceptualization অনেক টাইম নেয়, ওকে, অ্যান্ড আই ওয়াজ ওয়ান্স ভেরি ওয়ারিড। আমি অনেক টাইম নিচ্ছিলাম টু কনসেপচুয়ালাইজ চ্যাপ্টার্স। আমার এমফিলেও অনেক টাইম লেগেছিল, পিএইচডিতেও টাইম লেগেছিল। এমফিল অফকোর্স নট রেলেভেন্ট এনিমোর, ডিগ্রিটা, তো উইল অনলি টক অ্যাবাউট পিএইচডি। সো কনসেপচুয়ালাইজিং দ্য চ্যাপ্টার্স, when it was taking a lot of time, I was very worried that I am very confused about it. Maybe I am not up to the mark to, carry ahead after my coursework PhD. Then a lot of people told me that conceptualizing the PhD is very essential. Once you conceptualize the chapters, you have the blueprint in mind, it becomes very easy to go ahead. Not exactly very easy, but you have a guideline. So conceptualize করাটা খুব important হয়. Take as much time as possible in meetings to sit with your supervisor, if possible, DC committee member, to conceptualize. Tell them that this is how you're looking at the chapters. You can have one introductory chapter, you can have 2 3 primary chapters, and then you can have your conclusion with findings in it. All right, তো এইভাবেও করা যায়। তো but then they will give them your ideas, then chapters এর কতগুলো like for example, if you want to write a 300 word thesis or 250, how will you divide it? You cannot have a 6 pages one primary chapter and 36 pages and the second primary chapter. So ওটা well balanced হতে হবে, especially in humanities literature thesis. So ওই conceptualization গুলো, then of course, say for example, you have set of novels, তুমি এই রাইটারের কিছু novels দেখছো, ওই রাইটারের, which should come in the beginning, and which, if you have an interdisciplinary research topic like mine, where I had digital representations, data, and fictional, which would be in the beginning, which makes sense to put in the second primary chapter, age of conceptualization. Then, of course, a lot of other things. Introduction e ki jabe, introductory chapter e. Do you need, for example, I had another chapter which dealt with the contemporary and historical importance of South Asian diaspora as a unit, and why did I take up South Asian diaspora? Why not Indian diaspora or Sri Lankan diaspora? I don't know. Why South Asian diaspora? Eight questions gulo thesis of address korte hoy, as well as very important when PhD viva hoy. Whatever you put into there, remember that in your PhD viva as well as pre-sub, they will break it into pieces and ask you questions on it. So, তুমি যতটা assertively chapter conceptualize করবে and লিখবে, that much confident you will be when you have to finally defend your thesis. So, take some time. Take, say, a few months to conceptualize. Probably when you are going through your coursework of 1.5 years, 1 year, তখন conceptualize করে নেওয়াটা ভালো. Literature review and conceptualization should happen then. Of course, discuss with your supervisor, begin the process along with your literature review, because time লাগে অনেক, and coursework এর সাথে করবে। Literature review, coursework, conceptualization হয়ে গেলে, moment you're done with your coursework, you can have that I think at a viva, at a meeting হয় যেখানে you have to present your thesis, and they will clear that and you can go ahead with your chapters and with your data analysis and all. তো এগুলো conceptualize করা very important chapters. Then of course literature review. Literature review historical and contemporary দুটো perspectives ই নেবে. Again, if say for example you're beginning your research in 2023-24, see to it that 15, 16, 17, 18 এরম contemporary কিছু viewpoints নেবে. But historically, don't ignore it. For example, when I work on diaspora, I take the very contemporary things of diaspora, the changing meaning of migration and diaspora, but I also look into Avtar Bra and all of these people. They are खूब stalwarts. You cannot ignore Arjun Appadurai and all of those. Those are stalwarts in the field. So you take them, as well as say, for example, post-colonialism or I'll of course begin with Edward Said and all of those people. I will take them, but as well as look into the changing contemporary scenario of the field or of my topic. So, duto in a and very important, connect it with your research. Literature review, for the sake of it, even I thought of it initially that I'll make a list, I'll read the most important ones, history important, econ important, and then I'll just write things and end the chapter in that manner. But I was told that it should be connected. You should place your research in that. Say, for example, a lot of work has happened from 1950s to 2000. 15, 16, when I had started my PhD. Now, where do I place my research in this entire field, entire huge timeline? So your research should be placed somewhere in between it, and of course, keep the citations intact. All right, your citations কি হয় পড়তে পড়তে অনেক সময় you will have so many notes, you feel that I can come back to it. Trust me, it becomes very difficult as humanities researchers especially, with so much readings to do, to go back to the citations. So immediately you can remove the citations, but একবার citation কোনো লাইব্রেরিতে কোনো পিডিএফ এ পড়লে তারপরে খুঁজে পাওয়া becomes very difficult. So keep the citations, keep sheet, a word file there for the citations. যা যা পড়বে লিখবে, then you can add it or delete it, but always keep the citations the moment you find something relevant to your research. So literature review টা একটু intelligently করবে. Dilruba, in between that, if because I can't hear you, I can't also see the chat. If I'm overshooting the time, just give me a call and let me know. Okay. Okay. Now going on to the methodology decide korte hoy. After your literature review is done and introductory chapter, everything is done, you have to go ahead with your primary chapters. Qualitative nebe, you can have quantitative as well. You can have triangulation, mix of both, depending on how you would like to go ahead with it. I went for qualitative research, of course. Content analysis করেছিলাম, textual analysis করেছিলাম. You can, of course, accordingly with your supervisor, what is good for you, you will go for it. Qualitative, quantitative, triangulation, but methodology is one portion which is very important. It should be crystal clear in the introduction. কোন ইয়ার থেকে কোন ইয়ারে কি টেক্সট নিয়েছো, কি ডেটা নিয়েছো, why did you choose this, what again, for example, what is the age of the people, say you are going for an interview, sample size ki কোন sample নিয়েছো, what kind of interviews did you do, what kind of qualitative, quantitative, triangulation methods did you take up. All this should be crystal clear in the methodology. How much of data did you take? So all these things should be very, very crystal clear before you go ahead. Okay. This is just a very small sample. Amar a qualitative approach chilo with content analysis, and one very important part of it was intersectionality. Again, intersectionality আমি নিচ্ছিলাম because যখন diaspora place করেছিলাম, gender, race, ethnic identity সব একসাথে work করছিল. Like we all know what intersectionality is. So for me, interdisciplinary and intersectional approach worked for my research. And of course, it was an entirely qualitative content analysis research, very deep content analysis in a way. খুব huge sample size ছিল না, but in depth দেখার জন্য there was a limited content selection. So, but then, for example, this is how you would be writing it more or less, all right. But then এটা আরো অনেক pages অবধি যায়. and your supervisor would of course be looking into it and proofreading it and everything. So you will have to decide on the methodology. Methodology to clear her खूप necessary. Then of course the theoretical framework, okay, very essential theory. So Amar, it's very crucial theoretical framework, especially in English and in the humanities, social sciences again. But then see to it that you are not bombarded with too many theories. Ekada theories, what happens is one clashes with the other. So আমার যেরকম transnational and post-colonial theories ছিল, and you could, and then you go ahead and explaining it and why did you take it up, all right, why only these two and how is it relevant to your work. You could take up any number of it, the way, the lens through which you're looking at your work, your methodology is working, ওইভাবে তুমি নেবে, and then you will of course take up the writers you want to work on and all of these, and all the lens through which you're looking into again theoretical framework, methodology, এগুলোর ওপর questions ভাইভাতে আসবে. So you will need to defend it all through wherever you take your thesis. So theoretical framework to strong ragbe, as clear, don't make it too thin, don't make it too thick with details. Of course, too many theories shouldn't be clashing in your research until of course you are very confident, your supervisor is confident. I was okay with just two transnational and post-colonial theories. So I went ahead and looked into my research through these two lenses only. তো এইটা একটা ছিল. Of course, then outline of chapters, like I said, conceptualization এগুলো হওয়ার পর outline তো introduction এ থাকবে, brief summary of all the chapters, and then you move on to the next chapter, whatever it is. Always remember there should be a good flow in your chapters, and you don't arrange the chapters randomly. You will of course have meetings with your supervisor where you will sit and see which chapter is working when, which is more important to be significant, to be which primary chapter should go in front, and then the next primary chapter findings ki ki hobe, summary te ki ki likhbe, conclusion, concluding chapter e introduction e ki ki necessary hobe. So of course all these things will be there. Outline of chapters, first introduction or thakbe, and overall you should have a clear picture of those chapters in mind. Flow ragbe, it shouldn't be a sudden beginning and sudden ending. Every chapter at end, of course, you should give a little picture of what comes after that in the next chapter. So a outline of chapters of code, it becomes very very easy. Conceptualizing and outlining, you just have to go ahead, do your work, and write your thesis. Okay, coming to the conclusion, key findings of your thesis should be there in it. Scope for further research, very important, and limitations of your research থাকতে হবে. Say for example, my key findings were of course assertive spaces, কি করে কাজ করে, fiction, and of course digital spaces, the coming up digital diaspora কি করে কাজ করছে, and how youth work there, what are the scope of South Asian identity that works there. তো এগুলো থাকে. Those were the key findings. Scope was, of course, a lot of this digital diaspora humanities is coming up, and a lot of other generations of diaspora have to be looked into. I only looked at US. There were other countries where diaspora works very differently. UK, Fiji, Mauritius. Every migration diasporic community works differently. So huge scope for further research. And limitations of my research were of course there in the sense that I'm a quantitative study coding. So that again you can write that when you further take this work, you would like to do an ethnographic study, a proper quantitative study. All right. So oigulo, according to your research, you'll have to put in the conclusion. Conclusion again bhalo kore lekha is important because again egulo thekeo questions ashe. You will have to defend it in your viva and all. So this was just a snippet of my further research thing, কিভাবে লিখেছিলাম and all. So like the second major area of research could be the fourth or fifth generations, because my area was on second and third South Asian diasporic youth. And constraints of time and resources jone conventional ethnographic study honi, I went for a virtual ethnographic study and fictional study. So all these things according to what your area is there, you have to keep a future research section which will also give you a guideline if you go for a postdoc or if you want to go for further any kind of journal publications and all. Okay, this is about what will be in the research. Okay, I am sorry, I'm going I think I'm going very briskly into it, too fast into it, but it's already 8:40 and take just 5 more minutes. Okay, research ethics খুব important. মনে রাখবে plagiarism free হবে absolutely. All right, 10% ও যেন না থাকে. You have your citations, you have put things in quotes. There is only certain amount of words you can take from people. কোর্সে কটা ওয়ার্ডস থাকবে ওটা দেখে নেবে, ট্রাই টু সামারাইজ থিংস, গিভ প্রপার সাইটেশনস, বিবলিওগ্রাফি সাইটেশনস খুব খুব ক্লিয়ারলি রাখবে, স্পেশালি ইফ ইউ আর ডুইং এ ডিজিটাল হিউম্যানিটিস ওয়ার্ক। অনলাইন ভার্চুয়াল কোয়ালিটি যদি ডেটা কালেক্ট করো ঠিক করে দেখে নেবে, বিকজ দোজ থিংস আর স্টিল আপকামিং। সো দেখে নেবে এমএলএ এপিএ শিকাগো কি ফলো করছে। And plagiarism free, keep the plagiarism as low as possible when they finally do it and turn it in. So আমার সেন্টার 5% এর বেশি করতো না, যে 5 to 8 হয়ে যেত, they used to make us redo everything. তো see to it that 5% এর বেশি যেন না হয়। রিসার্চ এথিক্স মেনটেন করবে। academic conferences, again I assume that আমি যখন complete করেছিলাম it was still needed. 2 international conferences and 2 Scopus publications were mandatory. এখন I think it's not mandatory. I'm not very sure of it, but then uh, I would advise you keep in some international conferences. Please make use of international conferences and networks এখন online হয়। During COVID, of course, very good international conferences were absolutely free. So I had made use of those things. So it looks good in your CV when you finally either apply to the industry or to academia, all right? So international conferences, Ragbe, and publications, I would advise you, necessary or not necessary to submit your thesis, please keep either UGC Scare or Scopus or Web of Science publications. খুব কাজে লাগে, because you know when you apply for the jobs they count points, and of course it's for your own good as well. Your work would be published in good journals, so you will feel good about it. Though journal publications and all, I would advise you PhD করতে করতে you'll have time, so please see to it, all right? কিছু good conferences and good publications যেন একটা দুটো অন্তত থাকে। So this is about it. Funding, of course, you would know, UGC page gele, you would have fundings. Again, non-net fellowship, till I was there in LCU, it was still there. I'm not sure it's still relevant or not, but you will have your institution fellowships as well. ITs and all have it. And now, though, you have your JRFs and everything. So try to get a fellowship. And okay, after that, after all of this, when your PhD or thesis is finally done, you will have a pre-submission presentation, all right, jekhane, and a viva, of course. Pre-submission, you will again, I did the same thing. I had a 40 minutes of presentation, both in my pre-submission and my defense, and defend your thesis well. When they ask you those questions, they want to see je tumi defend korte parcho ki na. Are you sure about the work? Do not get nervous. Be very confident about it, and take it as a conversation that you are defending it, but don't be too rude. Take down points, because they will say, for example, I was being given suggestions based on the fact that I'll publish it as a monograph. So they suggested that this could be published as a monograph with a few corrections. So then they will look into it so that it can be further published as a text. So again, ওইভাবে নেবে, but then defend. They want to see when they ask you those questions, which is again in your PhD interviews and as well. তুমি defend করতে পারছো কিনা, that is very important. Write down the suggestions. Pre-submit for final editing, proofreading in a month complete করে দেওয়া ভালো, and submit your thesis. Get ready for your viva, all right? And viva তেও again 30 to 40 minutes দেবে. There will be externals, and you will be given suggestions. You will be asked multiple questions, and don't get nervous. Answer your questions, argue, have a conversation with them. That is how you will get through it. And on it, like, they would be very helpful to you. My PhD viva was really, it was a wonderful conversation with the professors. I'm very grateful that again they asked me not to be nervous, just we have some clarifications, and that conversation went on and on. Why didn't you do this? Can you do this later on for your postdoc, or say for can you publish this later with these changes? So they genuinely wanted to know about all these things. So again, don't be nervous. Your task is to defend your work well. Again, this is about the defense questions. Audience could be external examiners could be note down, and further research and suggestions you can take up. So that's about it. I think I took up a lot of your time. So this is in gist, and if I take up your questions, but before that, thank you so much for having me, and best of luck. Always good to see scholars or young students interested in taking up research. Ami, I'm gonna stop sharing, and
Okay.
I'll put on the other device.
Hmm. Uh, Anindita, can you hear me now? Uh,
Dilruba, I can't hear you, but I'll put on the other device, and then I think I can hear you. Okay.
okay.
Yes, Dilruba.
Yes. Thank you so much, Anindita. It was a very informative and intriguing lecture. And I believe that our participants will greatly benefit from the knowledge and information you shared. Thank you so much for being here. এবারে আমরা 1 মিনিটের মতো একটা ব্রেক নেব, তারপর